After learning the concept of a VPC, load balancing, virtual machine, and the VPC peering, in this chapter we are going to focus on the concept of a DNS zones. Let's take a look onto our implementation architecture, how we are going to set up our DNS zone with our public domain, which I have purchased separately. So here onto the diagram, you can see that I have a Squarespace. So that's where my domain exists, which I have purchased separately. So we are going to use that domain and we are going to point that domain to our DNS zone, which we are going to create into our Azure cloud. So this DNS zone will contain few entries. So these are the entries from our Azure, and these entries will be mapped to our Squarespace. So don't worry about it. I'm going to show and demonstrate how it works. But this particular DNS zone which you see over here will be present into a separate resource group of Azure. And in this DNS, we will copying this particular entries which you see over here. These are the entries which will be provided by our Azure cloud, and these entries we will be putting it into our Squarespace, so that our Squarespace domain knows that where to redirect those requests for DNS resolution. So for example, if someone is trying to access my domain, that domain will try to find these entries into Squarespace. These entries will be present into Squarespace, and from there Squarespace will try to redirect those DNS resolution towards the DNS zone of my Azure cloud. And once the request is redirected to our DNS zone, then from DNS zone we can easily point that request to our public VM or any virtual machine, either it is sitting into public subnet or private subnet. It can easily be redirected, and that redirection we will do through the A record, which we need to create it over here. And this A record will point to the IP address of this public VM or any virtual machine. It can be a private IP address as well, it can be a public IP address as well. So that's how this whole resolution will work. And suppose at the end, once this setup is up and running, and if I'm trying to access this whole setup through a domain, then I'll try to access the domain, then domain will point, redirect me to Squarespace. Squarespace will find the DNS resolutions of these entries in DNS zone, and here it will find the A record which contains the IP address of this particular virtual machine, and this will be redirected over here. And here in this whole setup, virtual machine is just a one resource, but in Azure cloud there could be multiple resources through which we can redirect this particular request. So instead of public virtual machine, you can have a Kubernetes cluster as well. So this is just an example I am saying to you, and apart from that, you can also configure the load balancer. So instead of directly reaching out to the public VM, you can have a fronting a load balancer, and that load balancer can redirect the request to the multiple virtual machine as well. So those are the applications which you can implement through this particular concept. So let's try to simplify this thing and try to stick with virtual machine, and later in the chapters we are going to focus more on to our load balancer and some more complex topic which we can cover through our DNS zones. If you're liking this Azure series, then I have recently launched my Udemy course, which includes 60 plus chapter, and I always keep on adding new chapter to that particular Udemy course, which you can see over here. And this course will take you from a beginner to the advanced level. So if you really want to excel your cloud journey in Azure, then please considering checking out this particular course, and I'll post the link of this particular course into the description section. Now let's get back to the topic. Alright, so let's first start with the Squarespace. So first I'll show you the Squarespace from where I have purchased the domain, and then we will jump to this DNS zone which we will create afterwards. So I'll close the screen from here and go back to my browser, and here you can see this is the Squarespace account through which I have purchased my domain, and this is the domain which I have reserved or purchased previously. So this is just the part where you need to put a little bit of money to purchase a domain, and if you are just learning and trying to experiment, then try to purchase a very cheap domain which you can find from multiple vendors. So here this is the domain which I have purchased, and in this domain the crucial thing which you need to keep in mind is the DNS. We will be working with the DNS name servers quite a lot, and it doesn't matter whether you purchase from a Squarespace or any other vendor, these DNS and DNS name server settings will always be there. So go and check out the DNS name server settings from where you have purchased your domain. So let me show you how the name server settings will look like. So here if you click on this name servers, then you will find these are the entries. So here you can see that these are the DNS entries which I have been testing it out. But since we will do the fresh, so I will try to remove these entries. So these entries from where to get, I will show you that these entries will be created in our Azure, and those entries we need to copy from Azure and paste it over here. Although you can see these are the entries, but these are not valid anymore because I have removed this public DNS zone from our Azure cloud. But I just wanted to give you a heads up that how the settings would look like once we create a DNS zone, and those settings needs to be copied into our Squarespace domain name server settings. So let's get back to our Azure portal and we will try to create our DNS zone over there. Alright, so here is my Azure portal, and in the search box I'll type DNS zones over here. So click on this DNS zone. So remember that we are not going to work right now into the private DNS zones. We are going to work into the DNS zone, which is our public DNS zone in Azure. So click on this one, and here you can see there is no DNS zone as of now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create my first DNS zone. So here click on create, and the zone name, I generally keep it with the domain name. So for example, my domain name over here is, if I show you once again, then it's a jhook.org. So I'm going to keep the same zone name so that I can identify what is the zone name and where it belongs to and which domain it belongs to. Okay, so get back over here, and here I have already created a resource group for this particular DNS zone. So I'm going to select that resource group, and here I need to put in the name. So here I'm going to put as jhook.org, and after that I will just click on review and create. Here it will do some validation, and validation has passed, and then click on create. And now you can see it is just started to create my DNS zone. So it might take a minute or so to create your first DNS zone. And once the DNS zones are ready, then I'm going to show you the name server settings. As you can see over here, our DNS zone has been created. Click on go to resources over here. And here you can see this is the jhook.org, which is our DNS zone. And the key important thing over here is the record set. So here click on this record set over here, where you will find your domain name server of this particular DNS zone. So here you can see these are the name server settings of your particular domain name, or this DNS zone which you have just configured, and this is for Azure. And now you need to copy these details from here and go to your Squarespace, go to name server, and here we need to put in all of those details. So what I'll do, I'll just start deleting these entries, old entries, because I don't need those anymore. Click on delete. Okay, so Squarespace has some limitation where it says that you need to have at least 2 name server settings. So what we need to do over here is that click on update, and here I'll go over here, and here from there I'm just going to copy the first name server setting and I'm going to replace that. So here I'm going to replace that one, that's first, then go to the second and replace this one also, replace that one, then go further down and here copy another one, click on add server, paste that one, and the last one over here as well. Copy these and go to Squarespace, add server, and paste it over here. So as you can see, this is our DNS zone name server setting of my Azure, which I have copied from here and updated onto my Squarespace domain name server setting. Click on save changes over here. And here you can see it has been updated over here. Now we have updated our Squarespace and made Squarespace DNS server aware that we are hosting these domain name server into our Azure cloud. One key thing to remember over here, this name server update might take a little bit of time to propagate because each vendor has a different time settings for propagating these changes. So for Squarespace domain, previously I have observed it's a little bit quicker, but if you are having any other vendor, then these name server setting might take a little bit of time to get into effect. So just keep in mind, if it is not working immediately, then just have a little bit of patience and wait for it to propagate it fully, and after that you should be able to access it. Now we have configured our domain name server. So let me show you our diagram over here. So now we have done this part. So we have updated Squarespace with these name server settings. So these are just a dummy values, but I have shown you the actual value of our DNS zone, so which has been updated. Now what I will do, I already have this virtual machine which is up and running. Now what I'll do, I'll just create a record over here into this DNS zone. So we are going to work over here into the same DNS zone, and here we are just going to create a record, which is this one over here, and this a record will be the IP address of this particular virtual machine. So let's get back to our Azure portal and see how we can create this one. So here's my Azure portal. Go to the home page of Azure portal, and here just type the virtual machine. And always remember, virtual machine is just an example. You can have any other resources running behind, and you can create the IP based a record for that particular resource. So just keep in mind that. So I'll just click on this virtual machine over here. I'll copy, let's try with the public IP address first. So I'll copy this public IP address and then go to my, okay, before copying the virtual IP, the public IP address, I'll show you what is running on that virtual machine. So here is the public IP address. I'll hit enter, and here you can see this is the Apache default bench. So it is very dummy, not dummy, it's a very simple HTTP server which I am running so that I can test whether I'm able to access my virtual machine through my domain or not. So here you can see this is running and through my public IP address. Now I'm going to use the same IP address. I'll copy this IP address and go to my DNS zones over here. Click on this DNS zones, and here I'm going to go on record sets. So you will work quite a lot with these record sets. So here we are going to create an IP based record set. So click on add over here, and here I'm just going to put the name. So here I will put Apache 2. And here you see very carefully, then this is going to be apache2.jhook.org. So it is going to create a subdomain, which is apache2.jhook.org. And after that, here I'm going to enter the IP address. And for testing purpose, instead of 1 hour, I can keep it to, let's say 30 seconds actually, so that it will be really quick to show the changes. All right, so I have updated the IP address. Click on add over here. And here you can see it is saving the record. So now our DNS zone has updated, and now we have created the A record. So which you can see at the bottom, this is the one. So this is the A record which we have just created. And if I show you, so now our settings are working fine. So here is me. We will try to access this Squarespace, and this Squarespace is going to be the domain, so which we will try to access as apache2.jhook.org, and then it will point here, and from here it will find the A record, and that A record will have an IP address of this virtual machine. Okay, right now this traffic is plain traffic, which is HTTP traffic, but later on we are going to fix and we are making it as an HTTPS, which is a secure traffic. But let's try to test first the HTTP part. All right, so let's try to access the domain name which we have just configured using the A record. So the domain name which we have configured over here is apache2.jhook.org, and try to hit enter. And here you can see that we are able to access the default home page of our Apache 2. But just keep in mind that this domain name propagation, which is you can see over here, this name record population took around more than 1 hour for me. So how to check that your domain name has been properly propagated? So here you can see the name servers which are like a NS1, NS2, NS3, NS4 ending with a 03 Azure DNS, 03 Azure DNS.net, 03 Azure DNS.org, and 03 Azure DNS info. So these are the name server which should be properly propagated. So how will you check that these DNS name has been properly propagated? So for that, what you need to do, you need to click over here and DNS propagation, just select that one and try to Google this particular term, and here you will find a first link over here. So here this is the DNS propagator checker, which can check like how your DNS name servers are propagated. So here you can type your domain name, which is jhook.org, which is my main domain actually. And here in the drop down you can select the NS, which is for name server, and click on search. And here you can see that all of my name server setting which I have in my Azure DNS or Azure DNS Zone, which you can see exactly the same over here. So it is pretty much populated everywhere in the world. So anywhere in the world, if I'll try to access this particular domain, then it should resolve or it will take me to the Azure DNS zone. So that's how you can verify. And if these name server settings are not changing, then it will take a time. Sometimes it takes a day even also. So have a little bit of patience for this domain name propagation. And after it has been propagated, then I am able to access the home page of my virtual machine where I have installed Apache through this particular domain name, because that's the one we have configured, which you can see over here at the bottom. So this is Apache 2. So apache2.jhook.org. So this is how the subdomain will work for you. And right now there is one more thing which you can see over here is that it is not secured, which you can see over here. So this is running on right now HTTP traffic. The next thing which we need to fix over here is to make it a HTTPS traffic. Now to secure our traffic and convert our plain HTTP traffic into HTTPS, we need to install the certificate onto our virtual machine. We could have used the paid option, but we are going to stick with the free and open source option, and we are going to use the utility which is called certbot. So right now you can see I have logged in into my virtual machine. I can show you once again. So here I have exited from my virtual machine, and if you don't know how to access your virtual machine, then please refer to the previous chapter where I have explained this particular concept. So here you can see this is the command which I am using, where this is the private key and followed with my username and followed with the public IP. So let's enter into our virtual machine. I'll clear the screen. And right now, if you can see, I have already highlighted this is a HTTP traffic, but instead of that, we need to have HTTPS traffic. Okay, for that we are going to install the utility which is called certbot, and I will paste all of these commands into our instruction section in this particular course. So here I am just going to install the certbot utility, which is going to help me to generate the SSL certificate. So let's copy. I have copied the command and just execute this particular command. And it will take a few minutes, within a minute, and it will be installed onto your machine. And here you can see our certbot utility has been installed. After installing the certbot utility, let's clear the screen. The next thing which we are going to do is we are going to generate the certificate for the application which is Apache, and the domain name is apache2jhook.org. That's the domain name for which we need to generate the certificate. And this certificate is going to be like only for this particular domain, and I cannot use it for any other domain. So let's see what are the options it will show it to you. It's an interactive way of generating the certificate. So just hit enter. And here you can see enter the email address for any kind of a renewal. So I'll just enter my email address over here. Hit enter. Please read the terms of services. So do you agree? So yes, I agree. Type Y. And would you be willing, once the certificate is issued, to share your email address with the Electronic Frontier Foundation? So I don't have a problem. So I will just type yes over here. And here you can see it is requesting a certificate, which means it is trying to generate the certificate. And once this certificate has been requested, then it is going to install that certificate for my Apache as well. So here you can see now it is trying to deploy the certificate, and here you can see it has pretty much installed the certificate with the help of Let's Encrypt, which means our certificate is installed and it is now serving our traffic onto HTTPS. Now, after installing the certificate, we also need to update the network security group to allow the traffic on a 443 of our virtual machine. So here in the search box of our Azure portal, you can type network security group. And here click on this network security group option, click on this network security group over here. And here you can see these are the network security group which I have configured. So I have configured for port 22 and port 80, but I have not configured it for port 443. So now we need to set up an inbound rule so that we allow port 443. So here on the left hand side, click on inbound security group rules. click on add over here, and here I'm just going to allow the port 443, and for that, instead of service type custom, I'm going to choose HTTPS. So this is an additional thing which we are trying to allow for our virtual machine. Click on add over here, and here you can see it is just creating that security rule, and after creating the security rule, we should be able to access our Apache 2 homepage on HTTPS instead of HTTP. Let's try to test this particular HTTPS traffic. So here I'm going to type HTTPS, and after that I need to type Apache 2 jhook.org and hit enter, and here you can see our traffic is now secured. Here you can see the traffic which you can see in this particular option. Let me reopen that. So here you can see connection is secured, and here you are securely connected to this site using the Let's Encrypt. So that's the certificate we are using to secure our virtual machine and all the traffic coming to this particular virtual machine. And to secure your application a little bit more, what you can do later on, you can just remove this particular port, which is 80, because it is running on a HTTP, and HTTP is not a secured way. So you can simply remove this particular network security group inbound rule entry, so that all of your traffic is only served on HTTPS.